Welcome to Global South World Elections Live. And news reaching us is that the army has taken over Guinea-Bissau. The army in Guinea-Bissau has taken over power. They've also arrested the president. And this after a few days of election. Election was held on Sunday in Guinea-Bissau, and the results are expected to be announced tomorrow. And already the army has decided to take over. They read a statement on television after gunshots were heard in the capital, and the army said they had deposed President Umaru Sissoco Embalo and then suspended the electoral process, shut borders, and they're going to enforce a curfew. We have some videos from Guinea-Bissau from our team on the ground, and we'll be playing them soon. And also, a lot of citizens are sharing videos on social media where we're going to look at what is really happening in the country. And the gunshots lasted for about an hour, and it stopped at 2 p.m. GMT. That's 1400 GMT, journalists had said. And also the Electoral Commission, they on Thursday announced that the provisional results from the elections, which Embalo faced off against top challenger Fernando Diaz, will be announced tomorrow. And this never happened. Well, we're going to have a discussion on the elections and also on the coup d'etat that has happened in Guinea-Bissau. We've seen this before. We saw it in Mali. We saw it in Burkina Faso. We also saw it in Niger. And it seems it's not ending when indeed we expect it to end. So many people and experts in West Africa are calling for this to end because we are in the 21st century. It's not expected to be continuing. Our guest is Abdul Rahman Alfa Shaban. He's a fact checker and a disinformation analyst. He works with Fact Space West Africa. He's currently in Ghana. Hello, Alfa. How are you doing?
Hi, Ismail. Thank you very much.
Were you
I'm
surprised
okay.
when you heard about the coup d'etat just some 2 hours ago?
Okay, so personally, I wasn't surprised. The surprise is that it happened right after the election or days after an election, like a major election takes place. It was contentious. Everything coming into the election was chaotic. Um,
Mm.
the president's issues with the opposition. At a point, he had even a fracas with the ECOWAS when they tried to come in to resolve a few political issues. So my shock is when it happened. But as to whether I'm shocked that Guinea-Bissau has experienced a coup, I'm not, because over the course of the last few years, the government has announced foiling coup after coup, and one, I think there was
Mm.
a recent one. So not too surprised, but the timing is what actually surprises me.
And there's this discussion about the main challenger being stopped from running, and we still had Diaz also running. But could that be a reason? Could we see the military saying they are backing the opposition leader who was stopped from running, and that could that be a reason?
That remains to be seen. That remains to be seen. For now, what I know is that, and this is actually in line with how it's a trend across Africa. Even though this cool thing, let me also say, is essentially West African. It's a West African malady going down to Central Africa. If you realize the other parts of Africa don't have too much of that, but to center the issue again, the 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 opposition will be happy with what is happening because they have insisted the president has engaged in an institutional coup for
Mhm.
overstaying his time in office. He was supposed to have gone last year, and then
Okay.
because of these same coup issues, he extended till this election. So the
Mm.
opposition will be happy. As to whether they would support the bad candidate, we don't know, because even now, and it is typical of coups, when they happen, you want to understand the psyche of the officers in charge, the officers who have taken control. Are they going to say, okay, we will quickly hand over to the civilian authority? Are they going to say that give us time to stabilize 6 months or whatever? So what is their next move? That will show whether they would be leaning towards a civilian politician. But for now,
Yes.
it is what it is. The usual things that they do: close the borders, suspend the democratic institutions, and a few things. So that's what we've seen so far.
Well, the interesting fact is that Embalo wants to become the first president in 3 decades to win a second consecutive term in
Term in
Guinea-Bissau.
office.
And Also, a spokesperson for Mbalo he spoke to Reuters, and he said gunmen had attacked the election commission to prevent the announcement of the vote results, and he was linking them to Fernando Diaz, without providing any evidence. And now there's a coup d'etat. So it will be very shocking to say the opposition knows of this, and I don't think any country in West Africa succeeded in going through or going behind, going backward to a military regime, and then everything being normalized. Because we've seen, well, I can't say for Burkina Faso and other countries. However, there's no democracy, and without democracy, definitely there's going to be some form of chaos. There's also going to be some form of autocracy. And do you think in any way the people of Guinea-Bissau will be happy about this?
Again, we have to look at the sentiment of what's going on now. Like I said, the opposition will be happy because they have insisted the president has overstayed and he has engaged in institutional coups, barred people from running. So they would be happy. As to the general citizenry, all of this is actually taking them back to a series of things that have happened, and they have experienced it severally. Equatorial Guinea has gone through a series of coups, so it's not as if it's new, but the mode in which they find themselves now is what looks strange to everybody. You run an election, you are waiting for results, and then all of a sudden you hear that the president has been taken and military men are in charge of the country. Now, with respect to government, the spokesperson is doing what typically would be done. They will try to put up a brave face. That is, oh no, we are still in charge, or this is what is happening, that kind of thing. But for now, what we can say, I think clearly, is that the president is actually in the hands of the military guys who have taken over power as it stands now, because the president is nowhere to be seen. The president is actually active on X. Ordinarily, you
Okay.
would expect to see a post or something of the sort, but it's been quiet. As at now, even we are discussing it very fresh off the incident, but if you realize ECOWAS AU would be monitoring to understand what is going on before they issue a statement. So then you realize everybody's in a state of flux. The people more so than any other person. But for us, as people looking outside from within, we know that if looking within from outside, what we know is that the president, this has been coming. But how it has come is what is surprising some of the people who I may call analysts.
Well, my next question would be, could this indicate or signify a failure on the part of ECOWAS? But before then, let me play the video. So this is a video showing the events before the announcement was made, and this is coming from X accounts, and also we'll play the video of the military talking about the overthrow and also claiming power. So we can watch this, and then after we'll come back to our discussion. So these are scenes of the chaos in Guinea-Bissau before the military made their announcement, and definitely people were a bit distraught. People were running for their lives. The gunshots went on for about an hour, according to journalists on the ground, and it's not quite a good sight to behold. So, is this a failure on the part of the West African region? Because seeing Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and all the talk about getting them to come back into the fold, why would other countries also go this path?
Okay, so ECOWAS, I always tell people, it's not the it's not a big brother to any of the countries. All those countries supersede ECOWAS. ECOWAS doesn't have sovereignty over anybody. So ECOWAS is actually a group of people who have come together with shared interests. What ECOWAS does is try to reason with people that if you go this way, it's better, or you have breached our collective agreement. But to say ECOWAS has failed, what could ECOWAS have done in Guinea-Bissau? Not much, because they even tried intervening in the politics. And then Mbalu, the president, the ousted president now, says, no, it's an internal issue. We'll resolve it as we always do amongst us. He actually blocked an ECOWAS delegation at a point. The good thing is ECOWAS sent a delegation to monitor this election. So ECOWAS would have a say. They'll have something to say. I'm sure their observers are even still in Bissau. I will not be shocked. I'm sure they are still in the country, because they'll try to wrap up their reports and everything. But you see, each coup has its peculiar, the peculiar things that brings it together. It only so happens that across the Sahel, the three countries have a similar concern that brought the coup into play. In Mali, it was a similar security concern. And as at now, the junta is struggling with fuel. Bamako is encircled, we hear time and again. Niger had some amount of security concerns, not as much as Mali and Burkina Faso had. But you see, security is what cuts across. When you come down to the coast, to Guinea, Guinea's issue was a political issue. Alpha Conde had changed the constitution to run for another term when he was supposed to leave, and his own presidential guard, the leader, Doumbouya took him out. So you see, there are different things. Some are democratic issues. Some also are security. The Sahel issues are largely security, more security than anything. And then when you come down south now, you realize that Guinea-Bissau is also not security related. It's actually politics. People had an issue with the president. They took him out. Guinea-Bissau, there was no protest. There was no massive protest before the president was ousted. There were no concerns about security. Everything was intact. The state was running, but tensions were simmering. And what we see today is that the tensions have blown over. And so then the president is in trouble. And they have to, as you have said, they have reset themselves. They've taken themselves back, because with this security, with this military guys in charge, they could just follow a template. The Doumbouya template, the Assimi Goïta template, the Traoré template, the Mamadou Tiani template. Just stay, tell them I'm giving myself 6 months. After 6 months, you get a group of people put together as the legislature, and then they give you another 3 years. You stay for 3 years, you say I'm not going to run, and then in the long run, you go the Gabon way. We were here when Oligui Nguema told us that he was not running. He has run. We are here when Mamadou Doumbouya told us he's not running. He's running. So then, what stops anybody in Guinea-Bissau from running? It's a template. Just follow. In fact, in Guinea, in Mali, and Burkina Faso, we don't even know when they are going to hold elections. So
because they set a date and it was postponed and postponed about 3 times.
So it's a template, essentially. You don't even need to worry your head about anything. And you see, the point is with power, when power detests vacuum, once there's a vacuum and people occupy it and they understand that power has some trappings, then they stay. So these guys, we don't even know if the spokesman for the army who addressed is actually the leader of the coup. He could be just the spokesperson, because we've seen it in Gabon. Oligui Nguema was not the first person. There were guys who came speaking until they announced that Oligui Nguema was their leader. In Guinea, if I remember well, it was the same thing. Conde was put in the room, disheveled, taken away, and then those who were announcing were not. Doumbouya was not in the picture. Then Doumbouya was centered. So in this case, we are even waiting for the real coup leader assistance.
Now, the handbook, as you call it, has indeed been rewritten in Portuguese, because Guinea-Bissau is a Portuguese-speaking country. Now, let me play the video of the announcement made by the army.
Casa Militar do Presidente da República. O Alto Comando Militar para a Restauração de Segurança Nacional e Ordem Pública, comunicado. Instaurado pela alta chefia de diferentes ramos das Forças Armadas, o Alto Comando Militar para a Restauração de Segurança Nacional e Ordem Pública acaba de assumir.
So, what he was saying is that they already gave themselves a name. They call themselves the High Security Command for the Restoration of Order in Guinea-Bissau. So it means this thing didn't just happen. It's something that was meant to happen. And he's saying that the leaders are factions of the various groups of the military of Guinea-Bissau. So thanks to WADR for sharing
Radio.
that video. Yes,
Mm,
and
mm.
it clearly says what you are saying, that
Yeah.
some of those behind these coup d'etats are beyond those we see. There are
Yeah.
more powerful people in the background doing all of this. And it's spreading because many countries still have elections. We have a few elections coming next year as well. And they're all shaking because it seems there's a lot of talk about governments not doing their best. There's a lot of disinterest in the way governance is being run in Africa. And also, there's a talk about whether democracy is as it's being practiced in Africa, because everybody's looking at the corruption part of it. The media as well is playing a role by just showing the negatives of the continent, while those who are in opposition, those who have interest in leading the countries, also jump on that to push and spread a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And this is your field. You are with the Fact Space West Africa, working on a lot of disinformation. You've seen this in other countries as well as in West Africa, especially like Burkina Faso and other places. Can you tell us a bit about how the media and social media is used to get the interest of the people towards these military takeovers, and also how they are able to manage and rule countries without any constitutions until they create theirs, which is militarized?
Okay, so I will give you a small takeaway. We've spoken about the coup template, right? But let's also look at the democratic template. The democratic template for rigging or for twisting the arms of opponents. I want us to do that so that we realize that the government oftentimes are also, they actually trigger some of these things. So I'll help you. In Congo,
I think we lost you over there. Afar Abdurrahman Afar Shaban, he is a fact checker and disinformation analyst. He works with Fact Space West Africa. He'll be joining us soon. I think he has network issues. But we are streaming live from Ghana, and Afar is also in Ghana as well. We are looking at the Guinea-Bissau military takeover, and this is not new to West Africa. We saw this happen in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and in Niger, and it's been a few years now since they took over. They are running their countries, and the elections that they promised never happened. Also, in Guinea-Bissau, the president has been arrested, according to the military. The military during the announcement, and they are saying that they are a body wanting to restore order, and that's what all the other military leaders have said, that they are restoring peace and order, and some even went further to say they are restoring democracy. However, we see them staying on and running these countries, and we see also in Gabon where the military leader also decided to take part in an election, which he won with the majority of the votes. So we'll get back Abdurrahman Alfa Shaban. Welcome back.
thank you.
Yes.
Great. Okay,
Okay.
so about the democratic template. You realize that
Mm.
governments take pride in blocking opponents. They deliberately block certain opponents from running in elections. And it has become a template. You can talk for Tanzania recently. The main opponent had been jailed, so he was not allowed to stand. That is one. If you look essentially even at the case of Ivory Coast, Thiam was
Yes.
blocked from running, and he was seen as the main opponent. In Cameroon, Maurice Kamto was banned by the Constitutional Court. He wasn't allowed to run. So you realize that even governments are also engaged in systemic erosion of the democratic process, because the government can use any existing legislation to say that XYZ cannot run. When you do that, sometimes what happens is that they help the opposition to come together because they realize that we have a common enemy. In Cameroon, it didn't work. They had a split opposition front, but we all see what happened with Chiroma and Pobia. Now, it tells you that even the governments are complicit one way or the other. in this whole business, right? Now, the role of the media and social media, this is the truth. If you go onto social media, at least I can speak for X and for Facebook, which are widely used platforms in West Africa, you will likely get people supporting the coup. People online will speak in favor of the coup. They will tell you in plain language that it serves the government, the president well, because military regimes are actually better than democratic regimes, because nobody's benefiting from democratic dividends, right? Now, this is where the danger comes in. From a disinformation analysis point of view, you could have people who necessarily are not even operating from the continent. And this is what, in the language of disinformation analysis, is called foreign information manipulation and interference. You could have troll bot farms elsewhere pushing narratives into your space and then getting you to reason in line with the fact that it is better to have a military regime. The point really is that they want to, over time, erode confidence in democracy, so that even a stable democracy as Ghana, you have people having the quote-unquote cool mindset that, oh yes, it is okay if, because what have we benefited from the democratic experiment? So you find people using projects in Burkina Faso to say that in our country, we've been here for God knows how long, we've never had a project as this, but this is a military regime that has done X, Y, Z. What everybody would not look at is the other legs of democracy, which is the right to decide who you want to actually lead you. People only look at the face and then they attack head on. So social media is a big deal because it is actually manipulating conversations online. You can actually be one voice speaking about, let's look at it from this angle. But if you get a troll farm come at you because you are rather pushing for pro-democracy ideologies or democratic participation ideologies, you have a troll farm come after you. And maybe these are people who you don't know anywhere, but because of the public square that social media has become, everybody can say anything to anybody. The media. As at now, if you realize, we are all feeding off social media and Reuters and BBC and these are not, so do you even have an African platform that can sit back and tell you that this is the reality on the ground? How interconnected are African national broadcasters, their newsrooms, so that GBC in Ghana or NTA in Nigeria should be able to call someone in the Equatorial Guinean National Agency and ask for basic details. Here we are being fed data or being fed information solely from Reuters, from AFP. It's not a problem. They might actually be feeding off local journalists. But the point is that even amongst ourselves, whatever narratives would be spun around the news, we have to take it like that because we are ourselves hamstrung. So essentially, the media actually is a big problem. The media can drive the democratic experiment in a certain direction, but it can also drive it in the opposite direction. That essentially must be established.
Definitely. And now looking at Guinea-Bissau, for instance, Guinea-Bissau gained its independence in 1973 from Portugal. And that's not too long ago. And already it's been shaken by at least 9 coups d'etats and attempted coups. Since when Embalo took office in 2020, he claims that he has survived 3 coup attempts during his time in office. And he's been accused of manufacturing crisis as an excuse for crackdowns, and now it has really happened. Now, talking about the media, they speak Portuguese, and a lot of the works of fact checkers and all of that are in English. We know there are some French as well, but it's very popular in English. Now, Portuguese speaking countries like Guinea-Bissau, how would they be reached? Right now, getting on social media like X to find information from Guinea-Bissau is difficult because their language is Portuguese. So is this a disadvantage when it comes to the works of uh, fact checkers and disinformation analysts? And how do you reach such people?
Okay, so Guinea-Bissau is essentially Portuguese, Lusophone or whatever it is. But of course, economically, you realize that they are aligned to the West African monetary bloc. which is so they use CFA essentially, and I think French is also a very heavy part of their language. I'm not sure about its status, but it is. But the issue with language is language is a challenge generally for fact checkers and for people working in the disinformation space. More so because even part of the challenge of misinformation reporting is that you actually have people have a short attention span. They can't digest too much. So even working in a language that doesn't endear to them is even more problematic. Okay, you try to bridge the gap because you have journalists in different countries who are not experts, but they are well informed about such countries. So you see, for me to get through to Guinea-Bissau, chances are that I can go through a Guinean journalist who understands the Equatorial Guinea politics. It's almost like a Ghanaian journalist talking about Nigeria. They could give you very good insights because they understand the Nigerian politics, the Nigerian social structure, and all that. So the little help you can get, more often than not, is from colleagues who are French, but who understand the Equatorial Guinean psyche or the national makeup. So then you can also, and then most of the French journalists also have a very good understanding, or they have good insight about Equatorial Guinea. So you can rely on them more often. And then in the line of work as a disinformation analyst, one of the core components of the work is collaboration. So you are likely to find a Guinea-Bissau journalist who actually is also a fact checker, and then that person can easily help you with context, nuance, and other components that you may need to make your work easier. But generally, when it comes to passing your reports over to the Lusophone area, it's a headache. It actually is a headache. But the point also is that you have to make do with the resources that are available to you. And that's what essentially fact checkers do and disinformation analysts, because you don't have an option. You still have, work must be done. I may be in Ghana, but I have to do work around disinformation in Cameroon. Cameroon is English and French. You would get French people giving you some level of responses. You try to put one or two tools together, language translation tools, and then you get some amount of context. So that helps essentially to an extent.
Okay. Thank you very much. We are watching a live coverage on Global South World. We are covering Guinea-Bissau, where a group of army officers have seized power, and this is a day before the planned announcement of results from the hotly contested presidential election. And in the statement read by the spokesperson, his name is Denise Nchama. He is saying that they have deposed President Umaru Sissoco Embalo and suspended the electoral process. Also, they've shut down the borders and they're going to enforce a curfew. Now, Embalo, who has not been seen, we heard he has spoken recently to France 24 television, and he's saying he has been deposed. So this is quite interesting because he was abducted, and now he's out there saying he's been deposed. And the army is saying that the high military command for the restoration of order is behind the coup d'etat, and they are now in charge of the West African nation. So that's the situation on the ground in Guinea-Bissau. Let me just play a bit of the video of the army talking about the takeover, which was recorded on TV and played on TV, and also we got it from WADR.
Casa Militar do Presidente da República. O Alto Comando Militar para a Restauração de Segurança Nacional e Ordem Pública, comunicado. Instaurado pela alta chefia de diferentes ramos das Forças Armadas, o Alto Comando Militar para a Restauração de Segurança Nacional e Ordem Pública acaba de assumir.
So who you saw there is called Denise Nchama, and he is the one speaking on behalf of the group called the High Military Command for the Restoration of Order in Guinea-Bissau. And Guinea-Bissau is a Lusophone country, which means they speak Portuguese. And before they did this, there was an hour of gunshots in the capital, and also the president was abducted. All of this came out. Let me show you a video of the hour before the announcement was made. What you saw there are scenes from Guinea-Bissau, and Guinea-Bissau is a small nation which is around. It's around. I think Senegal. I don't know if you can help me out. It's around Senegal, thereabout, and they gained their independence in 1973 from Portugal, and also they've encountered a few coups d'etats over the years, and the president has also been reporting of attempted coup d'etat, even though many didn't believe him. Now, the coup d'etat has happened. We have a new military uh, country, I would say military state in West Africa, following Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. So, Alpha, Abdurrahman, Shaban, you are a fact checker, disinformation analyst, working with Fact Space West Africa. You give us some background to some coup d'etats in West Africa and how it affects the people, also how the media plays in this or in these coup d'etats. We have a few people watching us. We also have some comments, and one comment is asking who gains from these coups, and certainly not the citizens. So this person is also giving some hints that it's not the citizens. Who gains from coup d'etats? Are they individuals, or is it the country over time?
Okay, so any disruption in a democratic process is a problem. But like the questioner is asking, people would eventually be beneficiaries, right? They are either direct beneficiaries or indirect beneficiaries. They could be short-term, medium-term, or long-term beneficiaries. But again, let me also make another observation. You realize that whenever the coup, the junta takes over, they give you a sense that there is a certain normalcy that we have, which is being disrupted. So we are restoring it. They always come with that. So almost all the coup blocks, they always have restoration of something. So in this case, it's restoration of national security and public order. They're just telling you that there is a sense of disorder coming. If you listen extensively to the coup, the spokesman, you hear him talking about people who were planning to manipulate the electoral process. He actually goes on to say that. He actually also mentions that there are some barons who are supposed to have benefited from whatever was going to happen for the reason for which they stepped in. Who benefits? In the short term, anybody could think the opposition would benefit. But Robert Mugabe was removed, and the opposition actually got a much worse deal than they ever had in 2017. Bazoum was removed. Those who believe the military regime has brought some sanity believe so. Those who don't believe so are also there. But what happens is that I can tell you of the losers. The democratic process takes a big hit. Because as at now, those who support Embalo will be running, knowing very well that they are going to be hunted. Even if not by the regime, by people who believe that your power is now gone, we can come at you for whatever you've done. Now, what does it do to the democratic process? You just had an election. Guess what? Guinea-Bissau could have another election in the next 5 years, if you didn't take time, 10 years. And they will still have a leader who will not be elected. In essence, they will have someone being in charge for as long as Ghana would have a democratic president. Guinea-Bissau will have someone who is not democratically elected, but he will still be in that same office, enjoying all the privileges that accrue to him, because he will still go for UN General Assembly meetings. He will still meet with foreign leaders. He will still have the audience. And you see, because of the global geopolitical struggle, you would always have a global superpower accepting that it's okay. You can come and meet me. Because, for instance, China won't have a problem with what is happening. China would always tell you that your sovereignty is your matter, but our business interests you have to protect. They will send an envoy right now to meet the military guys. It's cool for them. The US, the UK, the EU would send condemnation messages. Hey, you be careful. Restore democratic order. ECOWAS will do same. AU will do same. Again, it's a template thing. But the military ruler would either be in his military fatigue, he'll be accepted in Moscow, he'll be accepted in Beijing, he'll go wherever he wants to go, he will be accepted in the corridors of the UN because the UN would not bar anybody from attending. So the beneficiaries essentially are those who take the power, but how they exercise it going forward will determine whether the people would benefit. For instance, if the military stays by a 6-month deadline, even 3 months deadline, and they decide that we are leaving, but we are going to allow you, we are going to hand over only when there's an orderly democratic process in place, then the people benefit.
Yeah.
So who benefits is actually in the hands of those who have the power now. And it is also in the hands of ECOWAS whether they can have any leverage over those who are in charge now. Because imagine if ECOWAS, because one thing I can say for sure is that in ECOWAS, they are big brothers. The chair is currently held by Julius Maada Bio of Sierra Leone. But the truth is, if Tinubu walks into Guinea-Bissau, I'm sure any general in Guinea-Bissau would give him that respect because Nigeria has traditionally sent peacekeepers to the West African coast. So Nigeria would have some gravitas over the guys there. Can Nigeria use a former military general? Can they use a diplomat? Can they get these guys to commit to handing over as quickly as possible? That's a question that ECOWAS is going to answer. But what ECOWAS would not want is to lose by 1, because now they've lost by actually about 4. The AES bloc is lost. Lost not in the sense of they are gone, but they are not part of ECOWAS, and they've actually gone off officially. Guinea is a going concern. They've not resolved Guinea, and now you have a 5th country in a 13-member bloc. You have 5 of them off. You are looking at 8 odd people. Gradually, if you get touched wood, 2 more coups, ECOWAS is split down the middle. You have people who have said, if you even should sack us, we will go. And you have people who are saying, we'll still stick to the ethos. But for how long? So that's essentially, you have to make that, balance that.
That's quite interesting. And I'm looking out for statements, and also a question is about who was there as part of the observer missions. And 8 hours ago, the African Union released a statement on the election in Guinea-Bissau, and those they sent there, the mission was led by His Excellency Mr. Felipe Jacinto Nyusi, who is the former president of Mozambique, and he was supported by Judge Effie Owo, who is a member of the AU panel of the WISE, and also Ovidio Manuel Barbosa Ekwenu, who is a special representative of the chairperson of the AU Commission in Guinea-Bissau. So you can see the crop of people who were sent by the African Union as election observers. Also, ECOWAS, I saw Ibn Chambers, Dr. Ibn Chambers was also there, and Goodluck Jonathan. They were also there. And unfortunately, they are not in the country, and this has happened. Maybe if they have stayed a little longer, that could bring some change, because election results will be announced tomorrow. And if they have stayed longer, it will be difficult to put them in harm's way. And all these missions that have sent them may have to also come around to make sure their safety is secured. And the other issue is that we saw in, I think, 2016 or 17, 2017, when the president of the Gambia at the time, Yahya Jammeh, when he refused to leave office after losing election with so many excuses, I'll call it, there was a lot of heat from ECOWAS, and ECOWAS even prepared a joint force at the border of the Gambia in Senegal, ready to get into the country and take him out of office. I'll call it that. And that made a difference. At least there were negotiations, and he agreed to move away. So what is stopping the ECOWAS force, or stopping ECOWAS from creating a joint force that could go into these countries to help prevent some of these undemocratic processes. And I know these countries are all independent states. However, they are members of ECOWAS before the military comes in there and then severs ties with the bloc. So what is making it so difficult for them to go in with their force to change the situation and also to keep the people safe?
Okay, so the first point, I'll make two points. The first point is that every coup has a peculiar set of circumstances around it. They are never the same. So you treat them differently. I'll explain why this is different from Yahya Jammeh's ouster. But then again, the last time ECOWAS tried and they threatened to use force was in Niger when Bazoum was removed in 2023. And they got significant backlash. And you had people joining the coup leaders on, how do you call it, on a massive march, million-man march, to say that if you come, you have to contend with us, the people. Not even with the army, with the people. So then you realize that ECOWAS doesn't have that appetite. And then as at now, most of these countries in ECOWAS already have their own peculiar problems, especially Nigeria, which is usually the biggest troop contributor. Nigeria is facing issues around banditry, kidnapping, terrorism, and now they have the whole load of the Christian genocide narrative. So Nigeria will be very careful with deployment. Now, even with deployment, guess what? ECOWAS cannot on a whim deploy. ECOWAS must go through the UN Security Council, which means it's a circuitous route to get to that place. Now, what is the difference between Gambia and Guinea-Bissau? Gambia 2017, Jammeh had lost an election, accepted he had lost, and then went back on his word. So everybody was like, yo, you are not doing this with us. We are not kids. You cannot openly say, I've accepted and I'll hand over, and then overnight decide to change your mind. That is when Mahama, who had lost an election at the time, Buhari, Johnson Sirleaf, Baikoroma, who I think was also on his way out at the time, or was going to, his term was very close. 5 leaders went to him, impressed on him that let's be more civil about this. Think about it twice. Jammeh called their bluff when they left Banjul. It took Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz, Mauritania, and Alpha Condé, and a third person, I've forgotten the third. It took these 3 leaders. Sirleaf didn't go, when he was leaving Banjul, he was in the company of either these 2 people or 3. But I can quite remember Ould Abdelaziz, at the time Mauritania, and then Alpha Condé. They had gone to talk him out, and then he was shipped to Equatorial Guinea. So you see the circumstance that we had. And then what we have now is the election result has not even been announced, and it has been annulled in advance. It has been annulled in advance. Even if it will be announced, it cannot be the president because he's been removed. So it will not be announced. It's gone. The Electoral Commission, I'm sure, has been closed, disbanded. That result they can keep, whoever won it. So then in the end, what you come up with is that if ECOWAS decides to use pressure, the only pressure they can do is to identify who is the coup leader, 1. 2, get them to quickly commit to the fact that, see, we're already having a process. Let's give it another, say, 6 months, organize the next election, and then hand over power and let Guinea-Bissau people enjoy the democratic process that they've enjoyed over time as quickly as possible. But you see, there's a difficulty. When it comes to power and who is deciding what next, you have people who tell you that, no, the system has to be grounded and then built ground up. Some will tell you, if you hand over today and tomorrow, we could have this situation again. So you are looking at ECOWAS being more cautious. They would want to know what they can do. But first and foremost, can you leverage these guys? Where were they trained? What is their ideology? How do they process some of these things? So when you get all of that together, then you're able to say that, okay, let's use this route. For instance, if you deploy 3 West African leaders to Guinea-Bissau. That would be a big weight on the junta. Imagine sending Tinubu and Mahama and Macky Sall. I say Macky Sall and Bassirou Diomaye Faye. That's huge weight. Like you imagine 3 African presidents coming into your country. It's almost like you're doing a swearing in for some countries. So you can imagine your Independence Day celebration, you always have 1 African leader. If you have 3 giants streaming into your country at a go that we want a meeting with you based on X, Y, Z. We want to have assurances. We want to have a communique before we leave Bissau. Then you can leverage on that to force their hand. But you see, for now, they could also do one thing: block everybody out. That we are putting the house in order, so no visitors allowed. And when they do that, they buy time to actually put in place measures that will allow them to stay for as long as they want to, or to hand over as quickly as they have to.
Okay, so before I take your final words, let me play another video to show the situation right now in Guinea-Bissau, where the military has taken over and the president has been abducted or arrested, and he's been deposed, and he's been made to say he's been deposed, according to reports we are getting. So this is a video. So these are things we are getting from the ground in Guinea-Bissau, where we have military trucks and vehicles moving around the city, and people running to get home to seek some safety. And already the announcement has been made. Guinea-Bissau no longer has an electoral commission. Guinea-Bissau is going to go through a curfew. Also, there's no longer a president. Guinea-Bissau is now in the hands of the so-called High Military Command for the Restoration of Order. And this was announced by their spokesperson, Dennis Nchama. And he is saying they've deposed President Umaru Sissoko Embalo. My name is Ismail Akwe. We are on Global South Worlds Live. We are speaking with Abdurrahman Shaban. He is a fact checker, disinformation analyst. He works with FactSpace West Africa, and their headquarters is in Ghana. And Alpha, you've seen the scenes, you've seen the reaction of people. We are yet to see statements from the African Union, statement from the Economic Community of West African States, and all these bodies sent observers to Guinea-Bissau for the election. Election was over on Sunday. They left, and this is happening right now. When would this end? Would this be like a Burkina Faso? Would this be like a Mali or a Niger? Or this could be different?
Okay, so this would be exactly as the coup leaders plan it. And I'm saying this with the understanding that they could have planned everything they want to do if they succeed by now. They could have planned it that, see, if this works, if we're able to hold this guy, this president, we're able to depose him, we would ensure that we stay for 6 months, stabilize the country, call for a national consensus, and then decide to move the country in the path of democratic transition. Now, this is the problem. The template as we have it shows that you don't need a timeline for transition. ECOWAS will always tell you in 6 months, but really and truly, it is your say so, because you can shut ECOWAS out. You can tell ECOWAS, don't talk my matter, or whatever you say, I'm not listening. So it's actually is very delicate. How it would end is how the military guys decide it would end. How it will end would also depend largely on how ECOWAS takes its steps in the next 2 to 3 days. what would ECOWAS seek to leverage? Is it using military generals, diplomats to get to them? Would it be the presidents themselves moving in? Would ECOWAS want to risk losing another member? Because now the worst thing ECOWAS could do, or the easiest way to push these guys further, is to say that we've suspended you pending XYZ. The moment you suspend them, they go defensive. Because the idea is that, okay, I don't belong, but what do I lose, essentially? I lose very little. And Equatorial Guinea is actually a coastal country accused largely of being a narco state. They have a drugs issue. All of this could play into the politics of the country. It would play into the global perception of the country. And Guinea-Bissau people, in their minds, are asking themselves that, how did we get here? I'm sure the politicians would know how we got here because they had a president who was actually showing a certain level of invincibility. Because you were foiling coups, it seems as if you had 9 lives. Foil a coup, foil a coup, foil a coup, you are still around. And then there's a certain air of invisibility. Of course, he's a retired army chief, so you'd understand some of these dynamics. He feels maybe he has his people in his corner. But of course, that's the one thing. You cannot predict how the army is thinking or how they are going, no matter how you do the appointment. And mind you, some of these things don't come from the high command. The army chief in Guinea-Bissau would most likely be retired soon. He will most likely be under arrest for one reason or the other because his boss has been held and he has allegiance to the deposed boss. So he has no business even in his role now. So the point really is that would it end, would it not end? There's a template. If you ask me to project based on what I see around, I'll say that these guys will just learn from what's happening around them. Guinea is next door. Doumbouya has been there since he deposed Condé. Nothing has happened. And we have a trajectory. I think 2024, we were lucky we didn't have a coup only in 2024. 2021, there were coups in Mali, 22 in Burkina, 23 in Burkina, 23 in Niger. And then now 25, we've had 2. Fortunately and unfortunately, the 2, one was in Southern Africa, Rajolina. André Rajolina was deposed in a coup. Now what we are waiting for is, would Embalo be forced to resign officially? Because when you are detained and the institutions of state have been dissolved, it doesn't mean that they've removed you officially. What they will do normally is to extract a handwritten, signed resignation that I have left my role, which puts them firmly in charge. Which means if ECOWAS even comes, you tell them that the one you are coming to fight for, all you can tell us to do is to allow him out of house arrest, to leave him. But what you cannot do is to tell us that he's still in charge because he has actually signed. They did it to, what's his name? The Burkina guy, Roch Kabore. When Kabore was removed by Sandaogo Damiba, he was asked to sign his own resignation. And they used that as evidence. I think Condé, that was the sticking point. Condé refused to sign immediately. So they held Condé for as long as he was there until he signed. Today, Condé was recently in Angola. He's now enjoying courtesies of a former president. But the point really is that everybody would come in. The UN will issue a statement. Don't worry. UN will issue a statement. ECOWAS will issue a statement. AU will issue a statement. Most likely, AU will be threatening that we'll take you off. But all of this will crystallize better in the next 2 to 3 days when we know who the coup leader is and when we know what his ideas about transition are.
Okay, and already the president of Guinea-Bissau, or let me say deposed leader, has already sent a statement saying he has been deposed. Thank you very much, Abdulrahman Alfa Shaban, for speaking with us. And we are running a live update on globalsouthworld.com. So all of you watching, you can continue following the coverage on Guinea-Bissau on globalsouthworld.com. My name is Ismail Akwe. We'll be back again with another live. Thank you very much.
Thank you.